Welcome back, webheads, to the next episode of Spidey Swing-Bys. I'm your host, Christian Ashley, a systematic geekology, as we continue on through every chronological appearance of Spider-Man by release order. We'll be covering 2 issues today. That, of course, is Amazing Spider-Man number 11, but also, and a bit of a whimper, Strange Tales 119, where he doesn't even get the honor of being on the cover and even like, hey, there's a special cameo by. So we'll get to these in a second. But let's go back to Amazing Spider-Man number 11. This is, of course, written in such a way. None but Stan Lee could have written this epic tale. None but Steve Ditko could have drawn such gripping scenes, is what we see in the comic proper. Now, as for everything else, this was released in week 2 of 1964. The release date was January 10th, 1964. The story is Turning Point, penciled by Steve Ditko, inked by Steve Ditko, lettered by Sam Rosen, and edited by Stan Lee. So what else was going on in Marvel this month? Well, we have the good old Avengers number 4, one of the most important issues in Marvel history, where Captain America comes back to life after being frozen in a block of ice ever since falling into the ocean following World War II. This is one of the best second origins of a superhero. Him joining the team is much needed ever since they lost the Hulk. Like, obviously, he's not as strong as the Hulk, but they need someone as competent as him. The impact of his character across the Marvel universe as a whole, just like, yeah, where could you start? Well, you start here with Avengers number 4. And technically, you could start with the old 40s comics. Like, this is where, if you want to get, like, who is Captain America, him coming back here to, in an off-kilter kind of way, join the Avengers and then just in time deal with an alien threat that seeks to turn them to stone. So you expect, oh, well, what does that mean? That as soon as he comes back, he's going to fight the Red Skull or Baron Strucker or Baron Zemo or someone else? Nope. It's going to be some random alien that's a Dabare who will end up being a part of the alien race that is killed off by the Phoenix when she blows up a galaxy or solar system. I think it's solar system later on in Marvel history. So there's some fun factoids there. Next up, not as good. We have Journey into Mystery 102, where Thor is menaced by Zarko the Tomorrow Man long enough until he can find a way to escape the temporal madman schemes. Thor works with him just so we can get back home. It's an okay story. Then we get to Sergeant Fury number 6, another okay story where the Howling Commandos end up going to North Africa in a kind of a flashback issue where they end up fighting against Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox himself. Another okay issue. Then we get to Tales to Astonish 54, which is an issue where Giant Man and the Wasp go to the fictional country of Santo Rico and fight against the Mad Leader El Toro as we fight off another pseudo-communistic threat in Latin America. There's that. Now, on to a better issue. We have X-Men number 4, where Magneto organizes for the first time the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants to threaten the X-Men. And there we have a Scarlet Witch and a Green. I forgot all about that. It obviously is our first appearance. They're still working stuff out, working out the kinks. This is a great issue. And to like the evil Magneto we used to get before, thank God Claremont came along and gave him some better motivations, gave him better characterization overall. Then we move on from there to Fantastic Four, number 25, where angry that he's been replaced by Captain America in the Avengers. Some great continuity there. Just a week after that this can be the 4th issue released, the Hulk goes to attack New York, forcing the Fantastic Four to fight him, and the Thing goes mano a mano against him and loses their first battle, swearing to fight him again. This is one of the best Marvel stories ever told in this early Lee and Kirby era for Fantastic Four. Like, no pun intended, this is fantastic. And the next issue, even better. You get the rivalry between the Hulk and the Thing is like, who's stronger? Who's able to fight the other? The Thing is outmatched. There's no way he can do this, and he loses in this issue. Next issue, we'll see what happens. But right there, a tremendously good story. Then we have Tales of Suspense 52, where we get the first appearance. This is an historic month here of the Black Widow as she works against Iron Man by organizing the Crimson Dynamo to attack him. Another great start for characters, like how she starts off versus where she ends up. I mean, look at the outfit. Does that look anything like what you're thinking of when you think of Natasha? No. This is a tremendously fun issue. Well worth your guys' time. Then we have Strange Tales 119, which we'll be covering in this. But before we get there, we have to start with Amazing Spider-Man number 11, the long-awaited return of Doctor Octopus. Stellar issue. I'm really looking forward to this one. So we move forward into all this as Spidey has been like thinking about Betty Brant and wondering what can he do for her. Like she hasn't called him or anything. As he's listening to the radio, he learns that having served his full prison term, Dr. Octopus is to be released today, which, time out. I have a couple of questions here. Remember what he was trying to do last time? Remember the people he threatened? Assuming he spent a year in prison, which even with Marvel time, I'm not buying it. How is he getting out of prison? Like on good behavior? What? This makes no goddamn sense. And as he flashes back, it's like even Peter's like incredulous. Like, how is this even happening? This makes no sense whatsoever for Doc Ock to be released in any way, shape, or form after what happened last time. So as he's forced to wrestle with that, Peter moves on to leave, suits up as Spider-Man, meets the warden at the jail, breaking into the jail in the process. Shines the spider signal down on him and say, hey, like, is Doc Ock still here? And the warden says, yes, but hey, if you know what's good for you, you better leave too, because you're not going to tell me what to do. You're not going to tell me how to do my job. So Dr. Octopus in his own cell is thinking, hey, I was glad I was smart enough not to try to escape. I knew I'd get good time off. I'd get time off for good behavior. Which, you know what? That's good. You know, the Marvel Universe, they just believe in people. Sure, you may be a mad scientist who tried to blow some things up. You held some people hostage, but you know what? You've been so good in prison. We're going to let you go. Doesn't that just warm your heart? It shouldn't. As he, strikes a match. He's allowed to have cigarettes inside of his prison cell. That's a fun thing. So we then go over to Peter, who's like, hey, the warden is right. You're not supposed to serve longer than your sentence, or, if you get off early on parole or anything like that. But this is when we see the invention of a super important part of Marvel history, and that is the Spider Tracer, which makes its first appearance here, and it's in its beta form, and he's going to use it over time as a way for him to track people using his spider sense, using other ways of electronically finding the signal. Excuse me. But it starts here. This is such a phenomenal part of Spider-Man's world. It shows the genius of Peter Parker. He is able to make something like this that, hey, he could give this away or like make a patent or something like that. But no, he chooses instead to use it for the service of others, to protect people. And in so doing, manages to track down Dr. Octopus, but he is being driven away from prison by Betty Brant, which throws Peter for a loop. It's like, why is that happening? That makes no sense whatsoever. So he puts the Spider Tracer on the car and tracks them down, but unfortunately does lose them. So we then end up seeing an attorney named Blackie, the very racially sensitive name of Blackie, who is meeting up with a young man who is Betty Brant's brother, Bennett Brant. He is in prison. He was used as a stooge for the mob. He had gone to law school. He tried to make a name for himself, but he wanted that easy money. And in that attempt, he got sent to prison. And now Betty is in the midst of it as he sees Dr. Octopus threatening her, as she hasn't said a word since they've drove that way from New York. They've gone all the way to Pennsylvania to get as far away from the city as possible. But Betty and Bennett reunite for a bit. He apologizes for what he's done to her, and that, one day he'll make her proud of him. But unfortunately, he has to stay as an accessory to all this, and it doesn't make Betty happy to do that. And she realizes, hey, like, he says these things, but he doesn't mean them. And I'm left here trying to wrestle with all this, and I'm not getting anything from it. And she even left Peter for this, who, by the way, is with Aunt May, and tells that he's going to go to Philadelphia and see the historical sites. Which, you know what? Oh, gosh. It is just fun. It's good to see Aunt May up and about after her illness. She's doing well. So Peter then swings away and ends up in Philadelphia, where he finds Betty. And she is very happy to see him. And he tells her just how much she means to him. And she says, I've been such a fool about how I've handled the situation. I should have trusted you with this. But she didn't know where to turn. And she explains the situation to Peter, who does encourage her about how she's not responsible for this. But Peter, being as sly as ever, mentions that, hey, I learned that Spider-Man's in Philadelphia, so I came here for that. And that's totally why Spider-Man is going to be here, not because I am Spider-Man, even though he's kind of wondering, should I tell her about all this mess? And we didn't get Dr. Octopus getting Blackie out of jail, as Spider-Man swings through the city trying to locate Dr. Octopus, trying to figure out this whole scenario. And in the process, they try to leave on a ship. But Spider-Man manages to track them down after Bennett is beaten down by Blackie for speaking back against them. Spider-Man starts surrendering so that he can get closer to everyone, which Dr. Octopus calls out. He's like, are you people morons? Why didn't you try and do something about him? But he has been waiting for a chance to get revenge on Spider-Man for putting him in prison, so he's going to do something about that. So Spider-Man starts beating up the thugs, manages to punch one into Dr. Octopus, forcing him out of the situation for now, and goes after them. But in the process, fighting with the criminal over his gun, the gun discharges and Bennett is hit. We don't see that because this is still early Marvel. They're little discretion shots for this, but Betty freaks out and notices that he's been shot because of Spider-Man grappling with the criminal. And Peter does bring up, like, hey, I told him to get away until he got the gun, but he got hit. And Betty blames Spider-Man for it in the heat of the moment, starts hitting him on the chest. It's like how much she hates him for what he's done. And of course, Peter's taken aback by this, and he's like, hey, you can't mean that. And in a grand sense of irony, she just wonders, well, if only Peter were here. He's the only one I can turn to. And Bennett's dead because of Spider-Man, who is Peter Parker. And he's wondering, how can I convince her that she's wrong? But in the midst of this, Blackie tries to escape, and Peter goes after him, and angry about this situation, beats the heck out of him as Dr. Octopus comes back to fight him in the midst of all this. The two of them then tussle, going back and forth at one another. Spider-Man tries to get away, but in the process, Dr. Octopus outsmarts him, grabs him with one of his tentacles, throws him around a bit. Spider-Man gets away for a second. The two of them continue fighting under the ship as Betty is taken as a hostage by some of the crooks. And in the process of it all, Spider-Man fights with Dr. Octopus to get away from it on a smaller ship, hopefully to keep the damage to a minimal. But the ship kind of blows up as it goes out of control. And I accidentally I forgot to save an image. That's on me. So there should be an image there showing the ship blowing up and Betty being taken away by the police, who've learned that she's not responsible for what she did. Then we get Peter, who Betty does say, though, that her brother may be alive, would have been alive without all this happening. She's upset. Peter's upset too. And he's wondering, like, he's got to go to Betty, but now, even though he was considering doing it, he can't tell her that he's Spider-Man because she'll never be able to forgive him like this. And he's like, and Betty reminisces about her brothers. Like, he was so headstrong, so weak, but he did end it like a man, protecting her from the bullets. And she realizes, hey, like, I blamed Spider-Man for something that wasn't his fault. He was trying to help them. But in that kind of paradoxical sense, like, you can rationally know something, but emotionally you're not able to handle it. And Betty's at that point in time where, like, she doesn't want to be reminded of Spider-Man because she's going to be reminded of Bennett. And Peter, realizing this, can't bring himself to tell her that he's Spider-Man because it's just not going to work out between them that way. And as much as he holds a torch for her and they're going to try and keep things together for a bit, it's not going to work because there's that specter of Spider-Man, beautifully drawn by Ditko here, over Peter's life. This is a great issue. This is a really fun issue, one that kind of sets up our first two-parter in a sense. Not really, but kind of, where Spider-Man is going to have to deal with, hey, Doctor Octopus got away. So he wasn't even able to get all the crooks that he wanted to get in the midst of this after Bennett had died. So what's he supposed to do? What is he supposed to do? This is a phenomenal issue. It's got some great drama here, some great irony. Once again, the forcing Peter to fight against being Spider-Man and Spider forced to fight against being Peter. Betty getting some better characterization for herself. Like, this is why she was doing this, because she, out of love for her brother, she was acting in foolish ways, hoping that this would prevent things from happening, that he would stop being in the midst of all this terrible, ruinous life work that he had done, that it affected the both of them, that cost him his life. Dr. Octopus gets away, so he will menace Spider-Man in the next issue, and one of the best issues of Spider-Man ever, I would argue. And here we are. It's that sense of, yeah, you got some of those crooks, but you didn't win the fight. And there's more to be done. Like, you lost the war at home and you lost the war in the world. So what can he do? He just has to walk away for right now. Tremendous storytelling. I'm giving this one like a 9 out of 10. Excellent story. And then we get to Strange Tales in 119. Where the Human Torch goes up against the Rabble Rouser. And also Doctor Strange, Wong is name dropped for the first time, and he deals with the interdimensional magical menace of Agamon, not to be confused with Agamotto. I think at one time he even mentions Mormammu instead of Dormammu. But we're concerned with Strange Tales 119 on the Human Torch's side of things, because he and Spider-Man are kind of in a love-hate relationship with one another as far as being friends. So Johnny has, due to the past couple issues, been seen as even more of a hothead than usual. The people are talking out against him, saying he saw Doris Evans, his girlfriend, with another guy. He wasn't able to make the football team, so he's angry about that. The Fantastic Four made him stay behind. They went on vacation, but he has to go to school. So he's being, Spider-Man is being reported on as, solving crimes, and Human Torch isn't, so there's some jealousy there. So we start with the Rabble Rouser, that great villain who actually later on shows up for some fun issues of Wolverine in the 2000s, but you may notice there's a 40-year gap in between then until someone can figure out what to do with a loser like this. So he's telling everyone, the Torch is evil. He's a Frankenstein's monster that has to be stopped. The children admire him, but they shouldn't be doing that. So the people are rallied up against him. It's kind of one of his special abilities, is to mess with their minds. And as Johnny is dealing with this mess, Spider-Man actually appears, and what we care about for this issue, where he tells him, he heard about this, and hey, in a moment of let's talk about this like equals. I'm used to dealing with this. Let me help you in the midst of this. But Human Torch, Johnny ain't having none of it. Says, when I need help from you, Sonny boy, that'll be today. Now crawl back under your stone before I really lose my temper. And that is the last we see of Spider-Man here. So I'll move on. There's some machinations. He's working with some other organizations, some foreign governments. Oh, it turns out he's actually a commie spy. So there's that. And he's hoping that by spewing discord in America, he will gain a great bit of recognition by the government it takes over next, more than likely being the Soviets at this point in time. And the Human Torch ain't having none of it. They find that he's trying to steal something from a foreign prince. They fight one another. Antics happen. Johnny Day isn't able to flame on for no really good reason, except for heightening the tension of the story. And then eventually he is able to stop the Rabble Rouser and the people like him again. And Doris Evans just tells him, I was just doing that to make you feel jealous. Aren't I a good character? No. That is the end of Strange Tales 119, and we are better off for it. That is a 2 out of 10. It is a bad story. A good moment for Peter and Johnny, ruined by both of them being impetuous hotheads, one of them more literal than the other. Other than that, it's so lame. The Doctor Strange story, way better than that. Not the best Strange Tales had to offer for Doctor Strange, but way better than this trash. So that's what we're left with. Oh, and I should have mentioned the Strange Tales is the story is The Torch Goes Wild. It's written by Stan Lee and Dick Ayers, penciled by Dick Ayers, inked by Dick Ayers, colored by Stan Goldberg, lettered by Sam Rosen, edited by Stan Lee. That's that. So next time we'll be focusing solely, and you can see why I didn't make a full episode on Strange Tales 119 and just added it as part of this. So we're going to be moving on to Amazing Spider-Man number 12, where he is unmasked by Doctor Octopus. And like I said earlier, I am so ready for this issue. There's a lot of fun things happening here that I'm ready to see. So until next time, webheads.